How's it going, guys? It's your boy Mike from Seattle, and today I'm with Beth Traverso, also from Seattle, and she's actually a top 1% real estate agent for the entire nation. She's that good. Beth's going to talk with me today about something that Dave Ramsey said. Dave Ramsey recently released a video where he talked about how Seattle is the #1 declining price-wise market in the entire country.
City that has taken the largest drop in price declines so far is Seattle.
And he gives a couple of reasons as to why he thinks that is. We're going to watch that and react to it. But first, I just want Beth to do a little quick introduction on herself. So, Beth, thanks for being here. Tell us about you.
Thank you, Mike, for having me on your channel. This is really a lot of fun. I've been watching you for a long time, and so it's really cool to be here today. Yeah.
Good.
So I've been selling real estate since 1998. I have a small team. We operate in the greater Seattle area, both in the city of Seattle and the area just outside Seattle, also known as the East Side. And I'm happy to chime in with my knowledge here and see what Dave Ramsey has to say here about Seattle. So
Perfect. Well, I'm going to pull the video up then.
But a lot of people were predicting 2008 again, that real estate prices were going to absolutely tank. We said they are not going to tank because there is a pool of buyers that is much larger than the pool of sellers still, and the supply-demand curve will maintain the prices, meaning when you have a whole bunch of people trying to buy a few things, it holds prices up. It's that simple. When there's a scarcity, prices go up or at least are maintained at a minimum. And we said, of course, the exception to that is the areas where people are leaving en masse, and we showed a map of the number of people that have left New York and left California and have left some of the high crime cities and crazy politics of all kinds, defund the police or whatever else cities. And so, and we said, so far, though, even those areas, California, New York, Seattle, Portland, have not seen decreases in real estate values. That was about 2 months ago. Reports are coming out right now. We just got one dropped on the desk. Western U.S. continues to lead in home price declines. Of the top 100 cities, the city that has taken the largest drop in price declines so far is Seattle. High crime situation with the anarchists taking down the entire downtown area and have made it impossible to function economically in that beautiful downtown area of Seattle. It's a gorgeous city, or it was. And the lack of law and order always screws up economics. When you can't operate because people steal all your stuff or burn it, it's very difficult to run a business. It's kind of basic, common sense stuff. And so these areas are getting hammered. Their home appreciation values dropping like crazy. Meantime, Louisville, Birmingham, southern cities in Texas, southeast are going up in value.
Okay, so Beth, Dave right there, he makes a few different points. It seems like his main contention is that because of the 6 months of riots and looting that we had in Seattle, where they even took over the Seattle East Precinct and they had the Chaz, the Chop, if people remember that. He seems to be suggesting that that's one of the primary driving factors for the decrease in prices. And I don't disagree with him that stuff happened and that it was terrible and that I disagree with it. But in your opinion, is that what was pushing prices in this area to come down? Are there other factors?
Yeah, a couple thoughts I have about that. And I can understand where he's coming from on that. And that was a thing that happened where, but it's not as if anarchists were smashing windows in downtown Seattle this summer. That was 2 years ago that happened. Not saying that dynamic is 100% in the past, but I don't think that there's a correlation to what's happening with the real estate values right now, because I don't think that is the reason why. And for a few reasons. First, I'm wondering what his information source is for this. I'm thinking it might be the Case-Shiller, because that's what's been in the news most recently, is the Case-Shiller index that a lot of the news media follows. But the thing to note about Case-Shiller is that includes, they call it Seattle, but it's all of King County, and plus Snohomish County, which goes up to Everett, and then Pierce County down to Tacoma, includes all those areas, and they call it Seattle. So in Seattle, especially downtown, you can live and enjoy Seattle. I've lived in Seattle for most of my life, and I live just outside Seattle now. But you don't have to go downtown at all if you don't want to. You can enjoy whatever you want to in your neighborhood, completely independent of the downtown. And people tend to not go down there unless they need to for work a lot of the time. And people are working from home now these days. So if somebody's including the whole region, then I don't think that alone can be the reason that downtown Seattle can be, or Seattle politics alone can be the reason why that our region, our market overall, it has been the quickest decline in value. A lot of the areas that he mentioned are the areas also that appreciated the most. So so just to give a little more idea about like when the whole Chaz and Chop, like the whole whatever you want to call that happened in the summer of 2020, when there was there was some rioting going on down there, and law enforcement was not able to do what they needed to do for various reasons during that time, and that was a scary time. But that prices in Seattle around that time were around $775, and they kind of bumped around a little bit. And then I looked at this earlier this year, just for Seattle specifically. So Case Schiller was looking at the whole region, right? So I just like, okay, what about City of Seattle? And I looked at City of Seattle in January, started at $779 median home price, and it surged in April. It was $996. So it went from $779 to $996 in a very short period of time. Dang. It just shot up. Most of that happened in February. So it was just unsustainable insanity. And if there was that level of insanity, we're talking bidding wars where people were paying it. Right. A normal house, I say a good house comes up in Seattle, it's been remodeled, it's adorable, it's in a good location. It's going to go 20 to 30% over list price, all contingencies waived, and usually a very large earnest money of $50 to $100 or more $1,000 released immediately to the seller before it even closes. And so it was hyper aggressive. And if people were moving out in droves during that time, I don't think we would be seeing that type of environment for real estate offers. Right. That also is not sustainable. And we agents that were in it, we all knew like this can't be. We knew it wasn't healthy. It's not something that can continue to go on like that. And then it did correct. And so what shot up came back down. Here's what I want to mention too: is Seattle is still, according to the Seattle Times, their last data that they dropped. It was from the Northwest Multiple Listing Service, was that Seattle is up about 5.9% year over year still. The Case Schiller is 2 months old, by the way, also 2 months plus old. So they're still showing year over year price gain. So I don't think that there's a correlation between the politics and the real estate prices in this case. And another thing I want to mention too is that if people want to get out of Seattle, if that's what they decide is best for them, all you got to do is drive across. We have like a I-90 bridge. You just go straight across, or the 520 bridge, you go straight across Lake Washington, and you can go to what's called the East Side, which is a totally different area outside Seattle. And that's what a lot of people have done too. So, so I don't think I'm not seeing evidence of a massive fleeing from Seattle. And I don't think that the price changes are directly correlated.
Right. And, I agree with Dave about the issues that were going on as a police officer in Seattle for the last several years. I mean, there was rioting and looting for months. Another major problem that is contributed to, in my opinion, what I think the attractiveness of Seattle is no longer has is the homelessness issue. I mean, it's rampant in Seattle, in Tacoma, in Everett, in a lot of these cities. Now, as you mentioned, you go across the I-90 bridge to Bellevue, to Issaquah, to Sammamish, they don't tolerate it over there. It's much cleaner, safer. That's where I like to go if I'm going into the city. I don't go to Seattle, I go to Bellevue. But I think, as you mentioned, prices overshot their true values because interest rates came down so far. Everybody could afford to borrow more. They could afford to bid things up. And I had many friends, getting involved in bidding wars where things were going 50, 80, 100,000 over a list price. There's 20 offers in the first 6 hours. These ridiculous stories that were making national headlines were coming from Seattle and a few other cities like it. And so I think, to your point, it overshot its value, true value. And then when interest rates have now gone to 4, 5, 6, 7%, all of a sudden nobody can pay those prices anymore. There's only one option.
For that to not have an impact, to have interest rates double and then not have that impact. These bidding wars just aren't happening now. And it makes sense because the cost to own the home has gone up considerably. So people don't have that extra, a couple $100,000 to throw at a house. So
just laying around. Oh, I got a couple extra hundred
Let me
G's.
just grab it out of my back pocket. Yeah.
So Dave has, we're going to watch one more like 30-second clip from him where he closes up his statement. And then I want to hear what your reaction to that is. You ready?
Yep.
And so what all that is to say is, if you haven't bought a house and you're thinking about buying a house and you're sitting on the sidelines waiting on interest rates to come down, they're not going to come down in any minute. And waiting on house prices to come down, they're not going to come down. They're going to go up. You need to go buy a freaking house right now. It's a great time to buy a house because there's not a line of people around the block trying to buy that house right this second. You're not going to steal it. And if you're getting ready to sell a house, you need to have the expectation it's going to take you 90 days to sell a house right now.
Okay, so when he was making that statement, he was making it about the national real estate market. Obviously, Seattle prices are coming down somewhat. But in your opinion, Beth, if people out there are holding out, is it a good time to buy Seattle specifically or King County, this area specifically?
Well, of course, everyone's going to vary for different people's circumstances, but I think overall, I still invest in and believe in investing in this greater Seattle area for long term. So if somebody wants to buy a house to live in long term, I think they're going to do really well. All you have to do is look at the values over time. And even when we had the Great Recession, values did drop, but then they surged back. And I think the dynamics are there to keep our market strong and healthy going forward. There's a lot of reasons why. Building is very restricted. There's a lot of demand and very little supply. Even now, they're saying, well, inventory is higher. We went from about 0.3 month inventory to 1.9, and that's the higher inventory. So, if you look at it in perspective, and the jobs that we have here is a lot of high paying jobs. And even if it might get a little wobbly in the next year in the tech sector, overall, there's multiple industries in our area that I think are going to keep the economy strong going forward. And the great thing about the Seattle area is that there's a lot of great places you can choose to live around it. If you don't want to live in Seattle, like I'm saying, there's a lot of wonderful places you can live nearby and still have easy accessibility to employment centers, the Amazon, Microsoft, Google's, etc. We still, have a lot of other industry here too. And so I think that there's a lot to be said for our area growing in the future. And if you just look at the trend, my first house I bought in Seattle, I'll just use that as an example, was $125,000. And I did sell that house a few years back and traded it into a different investment property, but it's now worth probably about $1,250,000 even now. So you look at, is that good long term? And you know what interest rates were when I bought it? It was 9.5. It was 9.5. And so I don't think people should stretch themselves and buy something they can't afford. I agree with Dave Ramsey on a lot of these things here, but I do think for long-term wealth building, and a lot of people that I work with who are selling and downsizing, a lot of people that are moving out of state, they're using their equity in their homes to fund their retirement. But but people are using their home equity to fund their retirement. And I think if you rent, if you're not going to buy and you're going to rents have been skyrocketing in the Seattle area. So for the same thing, like on that house that I bought for $125,000, I was renting a house at the time before I bought that for $900. And now the same house will probably rent for around $4,000 or so. So,
Jeez.
And my payment at that time when I bought it was about $950 or so. And I house hacked just like you. I put a mother-in-law unit in the basement and rented that out. And so that paid for half of my housing expense. You find a way to make it work. And that's just one real world example of how investing in the Seattle area was life-changing for me. And so whether somebody's buying in the Seattle area or wherever their market is, I do think long term it does make sense as a way to build wealth and security over time. But you need to be able to ride through fluctuations because markets go up and they go down. When the market was going up 6 months ago and it was insane, buyers weren't exactly excited to be buying then.
Right.
And so when corrections don't happen in a vacuum, if things just switch to the buyer's advantage, something needs to have happened to make that happen. In this case, it was interest rates. So I would say if find a way to make it work for your situation, whether it's now or in the future, I do think it's important to get on the property ladder, not do
Mhm.
something stupid and pay some crazy, you don't want to put yourself in a bad position, but
Right.
if there's a way you can own property and hold it long term, huge fan of that.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm trying to help a friend of mine get their first house hack because, and I keep telling her, I'm like, look, don't buy a house. The payment's ridiculous. Even with your VA loan, payment's ridiculous. If we can get you a house hack, we're going to knock at least 1,000, hopefully 1,500 immediately off your mortgage payment and rent coming in every month. Now it's a lot more affordable. And then all you got to do is just hold over time. Time heals all. You'll have an opportunity to refinance because either it'll appreciate or interest rates will come down, rents will go up. Like it just gets better and better every year. But yeah, I mean, I personally, I'm not advising any of my friends to like look at a house right now, but that's also because I always approach everything from a real estate investor mindset. And it's like, look, you don't ever want to buy a house. You just want to buy investment properties. So maybe I'm a little biased.
Yeah, and for me, I'm sort of like, well, can't you mix both? Because like another thing for me is like in the Seattle area where I was in Seattle at that time, like I said, and there are very few multifamilies in Seattle. Seattle is known for its lack of multifamily. There's virtually none. And even where I live now in East King County, there's even less. So getting a multifamily to live in is a tall order. And when they do come up, they're very expensive, where it's sort of like, well, why would I buy this? It doesn't cash flow. But if you can find a way to maybe modify a house and to have a mother-in-law situation, I love split levels for that, because you can easily put a kitchen and a bath down there, a separate entrance, and then voila, you've got your house hack.
Right.
So, and my husband, when I met him, he bought a house and had, I think, 3 guys living in there, renting rooms, and he lived there for free, so and almost every investor I know was doing that. We didn't have the cool word for it of the house hack, but like, call it whatever you want. We just called it roommates or whatever. Like, you get some roommates and you put them in there, and then you're living for next to, you might be living for free. You might even be getting paid to live there. Or at the very least, you get to reduce your cost of ownership. So, and that you have the asset, you're still getting the principal pay down, you're getting rent increases over time, appreciation happens over time. So, and then you have that appreciation and that increased value that you can work with. You can use that to buy. I use that to buy other investment properties. Once the value started really going up, and I was able to do some cash out refis and other things and buy other properties to invest. And so it all started from that first purchase. Without that, it's a lot harder to, because owner occupants can get in with minimum down too. You can get in with, 3.5% down FHA, and that you can't do that with a non-owner occupied property. So there's all these reasons why I still believe that's a great way to go.
No, I couldn't agree more. Beth, I thank you for taking the time with us today. For anybody who wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so my website, BethTraversogroup.com, is a great way to reach me, or just find me on social. If you just type in Beth Traverso, Facebook, Instagram, etc., you'll find me. I'm easy to find out there.
Perfect. And I'll put a link to Beth's website down in the comment section below. Again, she's a top 1% agent for the entire nation, specializing like the King County, Seattle area. So if you are watching this video and you're from around here and you want to chat with Beth, hit her up. Beth, I appreciate you for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, Mike.